Do you want to record the webinar? Okay.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this webinar around the European sustainability landscape, 10 key priorities for sustainability leaders. So while we wait maybe 1 or 2 minutes for everyone to join, don't hesitate to share in the chat where you're connecting from and why you're here today. So we have Sergio from Toledo, Spain. Welcome. Yes, Sam is connecting from Farnborough in the UK. So for those joining now, welcome to this webinar, and don't hesitate to share in the chat where you're connecting from and why you're here today. We will be starting in around 1 minute. Okay, so we have Alexandra from Bucharest, Romania. Thanks for sharing, here to view another perspective about sustainability. Thank you. Emmanuel from Paris joining also. Great. So we have Nicole from Italy, Bergamo, to have an update on latest trends. Great. Okay. I think we will be starting right. Okay, thank you for sharing. For the ones joining now, you can still continue sharing. So we have Leonard from Germany also sharing that, here to learn about current views. Isabel from Madrid. Nice. So this is a really international event. Great. Okay, I'm gonna share again my screen. So just to start, so we will have a meeting, let's say webinar until 12:30 more or less, 12:30 CET. We will have representatives from the EASP, so the European Association of Sustainability Professionals, representing several European networks, sustainability networks. So we have Carlos Arango today representing DIRSE from Spain. We have Jean-François Cognier and myself representing the C3D from France. And we will have our guest speakers, our panelists, Giovanni Tulla, Head of Sustainability of Enel in Italy, representing the Sustainability Makers Association from Italy. Sam Healy, Group Director ESG at Kinetic, representing the Institute of Corporate Sustainability and Responsibility in the UK. And Yolanda Barahona, Sustainability Director at Aqualia in Spain, and representing DIRSE from Spain. So with that, just to share with you a quick view on the agenda. So a quick overview of who we are at the EASP, share with you the European sustainability landscapes and key insights from this work that we did at the EASP. And then we'll have the roundtable discussion about these 10 key insights and have insights from the practitioners around these. Then, of course, we have the Q&A session. And also just to say it, please don't hesitate to share your questions in the chat. And in the meanwhile, if you have questions, we will find them. So as you listen to the different presentations, and also say that you will receive both the replay and the slides. So with that, I hand over to Jean-François.
Hi, everyone. So welcome to all of you. Just a quick word on the European Association of Sustainability Professionals, which is hosting this webinar today in partnership with our main colleagues, sustainability makers. Essentially, it's a coalition of different networks of sustainability professionals across Europe. As a matter of fact, today we are actually gathering 10 networks from the largest European countries by population, Germany, UK, France, Italy, Spain, and from smaller, indeed, countries. We essentially, get together. For a lot of good reasons, we hope. First of all, we want to to do a cross-borders actually activities. Want to promote sustainability actors, sustainability professionals. We want really, to boost the professionalization of ESG, essentially practitioners. And we aim to be a voice for advocacy as well, especially with coming to regulations. That's not something we are doing today, but this is one of our objectives. So how we work today, this is relatively informal. We just get actually on a regular basis with reps from the different networks. And we essentially set a number of objectives and agendas, and we decided actually to, a little bit as a kickstart for this year, to actually hold that webinar based on leveraging essentially the knowledge and local presence of all the different networks. So the main topic today is actually this, as Marina mentioned, the priorities we are seeing for sustainability leaders at the European level. And I wanted to share some key insights. As I mentioned before, we will then go into more details and discussions through the panel. So how we did that? Instead of doing yet again, I think we all have a little bit of a survey fatigue being polled by also organizations in our respective jobs and countries. We decided actually to take a different approach and to browse, essentially to do a literature review of all the existing studies, essentially focusing on the domestic and the national ones, and try to get some sort of findings to see what's common across countries, what's different as well in terms of priorities across countries, in terms of recommendations. So our pool was of research was essentially based on public information. At times, it was actually studies or surveys and research done by the network themselves, like the Italian and the Spanish networks, sustainability makers and GSO. And at times, it was well-established consultancies or not-for-profit organizations. You see some of the logos here. We did not display all the logos of all the search. To be kept in mind, we basically browsed for more than 30 studies, most of them being targeted at country level, and a few of them as well being more at the European level. We then enriched actually that that essentially those findings through interviews. We interviewed a couple of people from our different networks just to test those recommendations, understand their opinion of CSR essentially directors, ESG directors, and as well get an idea of best practices which may or may not be in place as we speak in the different European companies. So summary, 10 key priorities, which we're going to present to you now. So we essentially group those findings in two categories, those more related to governance and strategy. And this is why we cover in the first place. And then Marina will take over on some which we felt were more geared at operationalization, to be put, for implementation. So we try to keep them separate. The first one that we came to the fore was actually the one on, to make sure that, ESG is actually set at the top, that it's really embedded corporate governance and leadership. As we know, the tone comes from the top. We need to make sure that our, exec leaders are trained to essentially well versed into, the challenge of the companies, and 3, committed to making a change. What we've seen as well is that there is really a need for essentially raising expertise at board level. That's a necessary condition to make sure that our top management can be the voice. We've seen a couple of good practices, especially from one company in the UK, where actually the ESG topics are systematically, on the agenda, be it for a portfolio management reviews, or risk management reviews, or as well, for all board agendas. So that's one way to make sure that the governance is well in place. The number 2 is more to do with making sure that ESG is seen as a value creation tool, and in terms of delivering long-term value, and of course, by so doing, making sure that making our companies more competitive and resilient. I will come back to that in a minute. That topic of resiliency, which was really something which we that came both from the surveys and from people interviewed as being a key topic of the moment. Essentially, how to do that? Well, it's just to make sure that it's really embedded in strategy. One interesting survey which we came across was one showing that for adding good ESG performance make you a primary target for acquisition. So don't draw the wrong conclusion. Some people may say, if I want to keep my job, let's keep a low ESG profile. That's probably not the right conclusion to draw. But we found that inside, extremely interesting, that we always think in terms of customer value, in terms of benefits of portfolio, but the financial sector is making use of these ESG credentials and proofs, and actually clearly monetize them in terms of making being a primary target for acquisition, thereby increasing the value price, the stock price of the company if it's quoted. We've got 2 more actually on the governance and strategy. When I mentioned resilience before, of course the flip coin is to make sure that we manage risks and opportunities. Again, that's a topic that really came again and again, both in surveys and when we interviewed people. And here we are actually, especially based on interviews, different approaches. So there is probably no one size fits all at that point in time. Some respondents to interviews, one of them at least say, well, we need to have actually some specialists for ESG risks to manage them. Some were more of the opinion that, we need to make sure ESG risks are now blended into, the array of risks and opportunities which are being monitored by the company. So again, it may be sector dependent. It may be as well, it's a relatively new topic. So there may be no consensus on how to do it today, but clearly that topic of de-risking ESG as a tool to de-risk is a very hot topic indeed, as we could see. The last one is really on the, making sure that, it's all very nice to have objectives and goals. We need to make sure that accountability is taking them into account. And probably the first and foremost way to do so is to make sure that comp and ben, are being actually tied one way or the other to ESG performance, and especially true of execs. We'll come back to that, by the way, on how to put that in practice. Marina, I think we cover indeed that topic a bit later today, but clearly accountability starts by making sure that we have incentivations aligned with ESG goals. And that's probably one of the key findings, which was as well confirmed by our respondents. Again, when we interviewed CSR directors, at times that was already the case, at times it was not the case yet. So here again, we could see a difference in maturity across corporations when we interviewed their CSR directors. So now I will leave the floor to Marina for how to get there and to make that into a real life action. Marina, your turn.
Thank you, Jean-François. So when it comes to operational deployment, so we have another 6 key topics here. So one of them was major insight was to invest in ESG competencies and cross-functional collaboration. So here the idea is this is still today a major challenge. So of course you can build training programs, etc. That at least large companies has done so far. But there's
Sorry, there are problems with the listening. Yeah, that's right. But the audio is working well, so I'll write to the participants one to one and see their problem, because the audio is working, Marina. We can hear you.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. So to come back to this topic, so in basically this is still today a challenge. Both the topic of investing and upskilling, let's say people, especially company functions on ESG, and also the cross-functional collaboration, because again, sustainability is a cross-functional topic. So this seems to be still a challenge, and so some of the recommendation is building, developing hybrid and incremental training programs on these topics, but also upskilling functions itself, not just sustainability teams. We mentioned before also the leadership teams, where, for example, we had a topic here where a practitioner from the UK mentioned that they invest, let's say, for their leadership teams with tools, trainings, and peer-to-peer learning to inform the ESG strategy and really create the culture from the top down. So this could be an interesting insight. And let's say the cross-functional collaboration is important. That can be done through, let's say, cross-functional projects, of course. And still, it's interesting to see, to let's say make an kind of audit or diagnostics to see where are still the skills gap, both in terms of ESG, but also with emerging technologies to leverage them responsibly for sustainability. As we know, AI has, of course, lots of opportunities, but also high impacts. So how can we actually adopt these type of new technologies also in the area where we still want to keep our sustainability engagements? Then, by the way, you see some little flags on the right-hand side. This is just to mention that, these key topics that you see here were specifically or especially predominant in some countries more than others. Well, this is what these little flags mean. And where you have like the world, there's like the Earth, it means it was international studies we also looked at. So the second topic here on the operational deployment is prioritizing people and social dimensions alongside environmental ones. So it's true that in the last couple of years, of course, there has been a huge focus on the topic of decarbonization and other, let's say, environmental related goals and actions. But we don't have to forget the people also. So recognize really the social issues in the workplace, social cohesion, and so on, to also inform and lead ESG agendas. And then balance them also with environmental objectives. This can be also, in some studies, it showed that this was also, let's say, a source of differentiation for some companies, having strong people and social dimensions. And then we have the topic of engaging stakeholders more transparently, especially in the world today where everything kind of is known, or with social media and everything. So it's about having meaningful, let's say, relations with different type of stakeholders, of course, internal and external. Communicate ESG goals and really progress in an honest way. This is also important in the era where we have now, for example, at European level, the directive of empowering consumers, the anti-greenwashing directive, where the idea is really that you are honest about where you are, where you're not yet, but what your ambitions are. And what was interesting in one of the we got an insight from, let's say, one of the people that we interviewed from Italy that said, as a large company, that this person feels responsible to engage and train smaller companies. So it's also kind of what is your responsibility as a kind of towards stakeholders in your value chain, really. So this is also something that we found in this on this, let's say, operational deployment topic around stakeholder engagement. Then we have the topic of leveraging digitalization and data and transparency. So this kind of different topics here. So of course, the topic of ESG data is still a kind of pain point for a lot of companies, how to get the data, quality of the data, and so on. So how really to overcome this issue. And then also there's the topic of using data to increase transparency, especially in the value chain. So here are some recommendations where using advanced data and analytics, digital platforms to improve ESG risk assessment and performance. The topic of ensuring data accuracy, consistency, and integration to build credible, audible ESG disclosures, of course. So someone we interviewed from Italy says, of course, this is important, but data is a tool that needs to support strategy. So don't forget this, because sometimes we're kind of overwhelmed by, let's say, projects about digitalization, but we forget why we actually are doing this. Again, data is a tool, and we need to remember what the objectives were initially for this tool to help us to reach these objectives. Then we have, of course, the huge topic of addressing regulatory complexity and capacity constraints proactively. So this was important, saying, okay, how actually, so we need to make sure, at least companies need to make sure that they anticipate regulatory, let's say, requirements in time to avoid high costs and everything. So of course, the idea is to create a process to simplify this process of anticipating and also allocating the resources, because of course, in order to respond to these requirements, you need to allocate financial and people resources, time, and so on. So there's also the topic of to do this to build internal capacity to manage this. Of course, if people know what the regulation is about, then they can actually also take action, not only like a small team, the compliance team or the sustainability team, but also other people that are involved. And of course, anticipate and adapt to these, especially at this point of time where we saw the different omnibuses taking place. So we prepare for a regulation, then there's like a step back, step forward. So it's not easy actually to navigate this landscape. So we had some insights from different countries. So for example, French, let's say, sustainability practitioners from France had said, of course, that the EU regulations are increasingly very demanding. So already becoming compliant is a kind of demanding exercise. And then another one that shared that they actually have a sort of process in place where they kind of watch, they have monthly regulatory watch meetings and updates to catch up. And they have actually a process in place to manage this. And in order to avoid just waiting for the last minute, there's a process in place to monitor upcoming regulations and then make sure that there's a response inside the company. And then last but not least, we have the topic of recognizing diversity in company ESG maturity and tailor approaches. So there's, let's say, so there were two topics here saying, okay, that of course there is a difference in, let's say, ESG maturity according to both the size of a company, but also, let's say, the sector and so on, and to acknowledge this gap between highly committed and less committed companies, and still so take this basically into account and tailor then the strategies or the action plans accordingly. So this was, for example, in major insights that came specifically from Spain and Germany, for example. And then, for example, leverage greater enthusiasm of smaller companies when it's possible. So this was specifically noted in Germany as change agent. And some insights that we got from interviews were that so basically, for example, a practitioner from Spain said that it's critical to adapt global strategies to local realities, specifically when it comes to this. So, for example, when you work with let's say, countries outside of the EU scope, of course, then this maturity changes. So you have to tailor the approach in working with companies from outside of the EU area. And also we had another insight from a person in Germany we interviewed saying that it's also important to monitor or take into account what was called the negative trends when it comes to diversity. So both in terms of maturity, but also, let's say, where we see in some countries maybe going, let's say, backwards when it comes to these, let's say, topics on diversity and inclusion in itself. So with that, the idea was to stop here sharing these key priorities. We did really a very short summary of the 10 topics. And then the idea is to discuss this with our panelists, really.
Absolutely. So we won't go through the pain of going back to the 10. By the way, there was a question raised. We will share the slides. So, I mean, you can have the 10 priorities. Hopefully, I mean, they were insightful. So it's time, I mean, to leave the floor to our panelists and to Carlos, who will be actually our moderator today. So Carlos, the floor is yours. And by the way, don't hesitate, I mean, for the participants to put questions into the chat. I will monitor the chat line and raise the questions to the Q&A session, which you kindly actually put forward. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Jean-Francois. Thank you, Marina. And well, good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be with you today in this webinar. Well, and now it's time to put theory into practice and to see how sustainability professionals are facing these 10 priorities and how they are managing these challenges in their companies. And with this objective, we are very lucky to have in this roundtable a great panel of speakers and sustainability leaders. And Marina did it before, but let me introduce them to you again. We have Giovanni Tulla. He's the head of sustainability at Enel, and he's member of Sustainability Makers, and he's from Italy. Buongiorno and grazie mille, Giovanni.
Hi, everyone.
We have also Sam Healy. He's the group director of ESG at Kinetic, and he's a board member of ICRS from the UK. Good morning, and thank you very much, Sam.
Hello, good morning.
And we have Yolanda Barahona. She's the sustainability director at Aqualia, and she's a member of DIRSE. Buenos días, muchas gracias, Yolanda, por acompañarnos.
Gracias.
So, before starting this conversation, let me say that you, the audience, as Jean-François said before, have the possibility of launching your questions to the panel, through the chat, and at the end of the conversation, and if there is enough time, we will pick up some of these questions and address them to our speakers. Well, let's start the roundtable. First of all, we will do it with 2 general questions, the same to the 3 speakers, and after that, I will ask some specific questions to each of you. And the idea with all these questions is to cover the 10 priorities identified in the report and study. And last, I will kindly ask you to go straight to the point because we have a lot of content to cover. Okay. So, well, let's start with these 2 first general questions for all of you. Okay. The first one of the key findings of the report, as you saw, is that sustainability leaders must position ESG as a driver of competitiveness, resilience, and long-term value creation. So, in your experience, what is currently the most effective argument for convincing top management that sustainability is a strategic business issue rather than a compliance exercise? So, well, Sam, you first, okay?
Thank you. I think the most critical thing here is to be articulating your message as sustainability is a business enabler. Your business, your stakeholders all have very, very specific needs. Everybody on the call is operating in, we have a similar approach, but very different in the detail. And I think, the most critical bit is that you acknowledge and understand what those needs and expectations are to allow you to focus on authentic, credible, and proportionate sustainability programs that deliver that business enablement. So I think that's probably the approach that I take.
Okay, thank you, Sam. Giovanni, what is your vision about this question?
Yeah, it's pretty much aligned with Sam's vision. I think that, one of the topic is to shift the discussion about ESG is about doing the right thing. It's about to sustain competitive, and and try to show that ESG is a driver for 3 very tangible dimensions. One is the growth, the resilience, and the access to capital. Those basically are the main topics that probably executives understand very, very well. And then it means maybe there are a few things that I want to put on the table. One is about the fact that if you frame ESG in terms of exposure to climate risk, to supply chain vulnerabilities, to regulatory constraints, or to social tensions or loss of trust, it becomes clear that ESG is essentially for risk management. And risk management is something that is very, very well understood within the company. But at the same time, ESG can be a driver of efficiency and performance, as it was already mentioned before. And one of the points that I like the most is the fact that it can help to unlock capitals or financial capitals, because we see that investors are increasingly, despite the moment, integrating ESG into allocation decisions. So it's very important to continue working on that, because I think that's a good topic to discuss with the executives.
Thank you very much. So it's not only risk management, it's much more than that. Okay, thank you. Yolanda, have you anything to add to this question?
No more. I think the strongest argument is the impact on the revenues of the company. With the sustainability allows us to win contracts, to have a strong relationship with public authorities, and get more competitive financing. It's the same. It's very important for us.
So value creation and growth for the companies.
Yes.
Thank you very much. I will go with the second question for all of you again. So Europe is experiencing a period of regulatory adjustment and simplification. And in this context, how can companies maintain ambition on sustainability while remaining competitive and adaptable in a rapidly changing business environment and geopolitical turmoil? I can go with you first, Sam, again, okay?
So I think it's really important when you think about your overall strategic approach. So I've been doing this quite a long time. It's probably about 20 years I've been in this role. And it used to be possible to create a 5-year strategy. And I think what we've all seen is how quickly things are moving. So I think we need, as we develop our strategies and our plans, is to really plan for change and plan into our programs that course correction, that ramping up and ramping down of projects to prioritize. And that's how we keep ourselves relevant and we make sure that what we do is important. And I think it's really important to phase our programs and really pause or stop things if they're not adding value to your business now, and then bring them back online later on if you need to. So I think it's just that real plan for change, being dynamic and being ready to focus on different areas, I think will allow you to stay really relevant in this changing environment.
Yeah, I like the concept dynamic. Thank you, Sam. Giovanni, what's your opinion?
Yeah, I mean, I think that this kind of, continuous change in regulation, the geopolitical tensions are putting the company in front of something that is quite fundamental, because sustainability cannot depend only on regulation. Otherwise, the regulation changes, but it has to become something that is at the core of the business logic. That's the way the company should go on. I mean, in understanding how to implement sustainability within their processing and their activities. Because at the end of the day, I mean, looking at, for instance, the power sector, the sector I come from, if you look at, for instance, electrifications and renewable energy, they are not just about emissions, it's something that is much more than that, because they improve the efficiency, they reduce the dependence on fossil fuels, increase energy security, they reduce costs. I mean, there is a lot more than that. So if you continue to consider or to be driven only by the regulation, I think that we will be subject to continuous changes. We will not have a direction to follow. So it's very important for me to stick on the long term and having the core business, the sustainability fully integrated in the core business logic.
Yes, so core business and long-term value and focus. Yolanda.
Yes, I think we are very aligned with the other panelists. I think companies need a clear purpose and long-term roadmap and very structured roadmap that combine discipline and flexibility. I think to have a clear direction.
Okay, thank you very much, the three of you. And now I will go with specific questions for each of you, and we are trying to cover the 10 priorities that Marina and Jean-François explained before. So Giovanni, I will start with you, and because you have spoken about capital, about investment, and this question is about that. So how is your company embedding ESG considerations into investment decisions and long-term business planning? You said that something before, but you can expand your answer.
Yeah, I mean, I'll try to share, my experience in this sector, in this company. I would say that ESG is not something that we add to the decisions, but is fairly embedded, into decision process, both for investment decisions, but also for long-term planning, because we have adopted since, I think, many years now, an integrated approach, especially because sustainability, strategy, risk management, and financial performance, they are all part of the same process, First of all, the group strategy, the company is involved in the energy transition. And so we basically combine decarbonization and electrification with a very strong financial discipline. And in order to, prioritize investments, sorry for that, not only about the risk return profile, but also based in terms of return, but also in terms of environmental and social impact. At the same time, capital then is allocated in order to to maximize these goals. Especially we invest in renewable energies, in networks, in energy storage that helps the decarbonization and it improve the financials of the companies. We use the double materiality framework. We have integrated it into the evaluation of opportunity and risks, and that helps in identifying, and creating the strategic planning, which is very useful tool if we use it, as a tool for compliance, but tool for obtaining results and to make the decision process easier. And then there is the governance side, which is very, very important because the BOD of the company, they review and approve strategy and investment plan, taking into account also the ESGs, so the sustainability risk in terms of climate, but also social. And the executive remuneration is linked to those objectives. So, we ensure that the management decision so that are fully aligned with sustainability performance. There is a strong consistency between, the decisions, the objective of the company and the remuneration of the executives. And then, as I said before, sustainability is also integrated into the risk management and control systems, which is one of the way in order to keep focusing on the long term and the solution identification of solution that can generate problem for the company.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. Sam, Giovanni has spoken about governance, and the next question is about that. One of the key priorities we identified in our consolidated study is the importance of strengthening CSR governance and leadership. What governance mechanisms have proven most effective in ensuring that sustainability is genuinely owned by senior management and the board?
It's a great question. And I think when I tackle trying to how to embed and drive these kind of aspects forward, I always think of it as 3 pillars, which is mindset, skill set, tool set. And I'm putting governance within that tool set. So bear with me while I explain. But when you're looking for senior leadership support, what you really need to be doing is thinking about how it specifically can be framed and to add value within their space. So it's walking a mile in their shoes and understanding what really drives and motivates them, and then how you can build sustainability in so that it really feels like an authentic part of their portfolio to challenge you. And it can take a little bit of time to really think about that really carefully. So rather than taking the whole sustainability agenda, maybe it's taking that part. So if you're working with your chief people officer, how do you talk to them about employee engagement and how that can be mobilized? So I think it's really thinking about that mindset and how can it be brought to life for that individual. And then secondly, what additional skills maybe do they need to be really effective in being your champion? And then thirdly, is that tool set, which is where are the, the processes or the policies or the working groups that make that successful and cement it? And I think any one of those individually is good, but they're so much more powerful when they're operating together. And I think in my own case, where I work, so I report to the Chief Finance Officer. So our ESG function sits within finance. And that's a really fantastic synergy for us because obviously our Chief Finance Officer holds the purse strings, is managing that financial aspect. But also, as we've touched on earlier, that piece around data and processes and stuff is also very closely aligned to finance. So I've got a fantastic champion in that Chief Finance Officer. Many of you will be sitting in different parts of the business. And so it's how do you work with those different champions within your own function, but also independently those functions that work alongside you. The second bit is around how do you work with your board, and I spend time with the board probably 6 times a year, and that's because both through my CFO who champions the ESG agenda more broadly, but also with our chair of the audit committee. And again, this is an emerging area that many of you are dealing with around ESG or sustainability reporting. We now have non-financial reporting as a core part of our audit committee requirements. And so there we've created that sort of structure that really allows the governance and oversight of non-financial reporting, which then creates a support framework for your sustainability agenda. And I think, again, the final piece around skill set is really just working individually with those leaders to understand what they need. So I'll be running some climate change training for our board later in this year because we acknowledge that some aspects of climate change, it would be really useful to provide that material. So I hope that just provides a bit of an insight into the approach that we're taking.
Thank you, Sam. You shared a lot of interesting ideas, the champions to adapt the needs of the people we have in front, to have some access to the governance of and the leadership. Okay, thank you very much. So Yolanda, I will ask you about risk management. Risk management, or we all know risk management is a critical capability. How do you integrate ESG risks and opportunities into enterprise risk management processes?
Okay, I'm going to talk about a little about my company because I think the answer is in relation with this. Because we manage my company, we manage the end-to-end water cycle. We manage the water and scarce resource, and we provide an essential service. And this year, for example, in relation with the risks, after the double materiality analysis, we have made an enormous, for us, an enormous work, an enormous progress with the idea to get or to find a common language for risk, because we have a lot of risk. ESG risk, climate risk, nature risk, and in the company, and the risk map. And in the company, this is very strange. Nobody knows about the risk, and they don't find a sense in the ESG risk because of this. And we try to get a common language for this, and we have worked towards an unified language and framework, and the result was a single corporate risk matrix. This has improved clarity, alignment, and the overall quality of our risk management process. Everybody, the board, and everybody knows the risk, and there is no ESG risk, there is no climate risk. It's the same. Everything is the same with this we have created a common language, and I think this is very important to manage the risk for the people in the company. And this is our case. I think it's easily for us because we manage. We are our business model is sustainability. We manage the water, but I think for us it's very important because there are an enormous there are a lot of names for the same themes, I think.
So the key or the secret is to have a common language. Thank you, Yolanda. Giovanni, I will go with you again to speak about capabilities, okay? So our key findings highlight the importance of building ESG capabilities across organizations. Looking ahead, what skills and competencies do you believe sustainability professionals will need most over the next 5 years, for example?
Well, Carlos, to be honest, when I first read your question, I thought I need a crystal ball, because the world is evolving at an increasingly pace. I mean, the velocity is increasing. It's incredible, how things are changing. Think about the revolution of the artificial intelligence, to mention one topic. And then I started thinking about really what is changing within a company or within some companies that I know. And one of the points is that most of the ESG roles up to now, we're about to setting directions, influencing the strategy and communicating the ambition. But now, I mean, companies are asking, it was said also before, more and more to define and create a clear business impact. I mean, it's no longer enough to tell a compelling story. We need to focus on impacts and on business. So thinking about that, I think that one of the first and important capability is to define, is definitely to understand very well the business, to create skills on business and financial understanding, because I think those are drivers that can help in implementing sustainability objectives and to achieve the objectives within the company. The second was mentioned also by the research that the 10 key priorities. It was about data and analytical skills, because the direction is very clear. I mean, sustainability is becoming fully integrated into reporting and decision making. So with an increasing use of KPIs, metrics, and accountability. So managing data quality is becoming more and more important. AI can help, but more than that, we need to understand what we need from AI, to help this kind of data quality, in general, the use of AI. And another skill is the technical and operational depth, because we need to understand how asset operations, sales, value chain, they actually work, because otherwise we are not able to impact on them, to create an impact on those parts of the business. And one of the last point that came to my mind is the cross-functional integration. It's something that is already in DNA of the sustainability leaders, the sustainability professionals, but we need to definitely enhance that, in order to try to integrate more the strategy, the finance, the operations. We need to be more able to speak with operative, with the leaders, with all the levels of the organization. And that is needed in order to influence, to continue influence the company, but in a different way, because we need to create the ability to influence decisions, through credible data. Companies understand data, so we need to run solid analysis, create a clear economic, develop clear economic rationale in order to be able to influence decisions and also to create a real impact. That's, my crystal ball. Yeah, what my crystal ball said.
It's a a huge challenge, of course. So the word influence in our role, in our daily basis role is critical, but it's not easy. So it's challenging. Thank you, Giovanni. Yolanda, I will go with you with two questions. Okay. The first one is about accountability. Our key findings stress the importance of linking ESG objectives to accountability. What lessons has your organization learned from connecting sustainability targets with performance management and business value creation?
In my opinion, the line sustainability initiatives with core business objectives is essential. I think the projects must be connected with the business. Sustainability project must be connected with business priorities to create real value. I think for us, for example, to put a real example, we launch projects to protect the biodiversity, but very close to the assets we manage. We in the municipalities we work, for example, very close to the organizations, to the governments we work with. I think companies must listen, analyze carefully, and stay focused on their business, no, on the core business, and listen the people in the territories. This is for me, this is the most important thing.
Okay, so the daily business and the daily work. Okay, so it's not in your company, at least, is not a separation between both. Thank you. And the second question for you is about technology. And Giovanni has explained something before, but
yes,
more deeply, data quality, transparency, and digitalization are among the key priorities identified in our findings. How can technology help organizations improve the credibility and usefulness of ESG information for decision making? And what type of governance structures and processes could help improve ESG data availability, quality, and monitoring? It's a long question, I know, Yolanda.
No, but short way. I think for me, I don't know if for other companies, but for Aqualia, this is a weakness. I think for me, technology enables with quality, with reliability, have a direct impact on credibility, trust, and for us, it's a weakness because I think it's very important. It's not because it's not easy to implement a good technology to know the company and to know how to manage the data, the owner of the data, the governance of the data, the validation process in my company is terrible because we are in 2,300 municipalities. And for us, but technology for me is essential to support data collection and the analysis, the aggregation, and we have a real problem because it's I think it's very, very difficult to implement, but to make decisions and to get trust, you need technology. For me, is crucial.
Okay, thank you. Giovanni, I will go with you with two questions very related to the S of ESG, okay? The first one about communication and the second one about social topics, okay? The first one. In an environment increasingly shaped by misinformation and stakeholder scrutiny, what principles should guide responsible sustainability communication in order to build trust and avoid greenwashing? And what's the best way to identify and engage with key stakeholders, internal and external? in this context?
Yeah, this is a great topic, Carlos. I think that I'm sure that everybody in this participating in this webinar can answer quite easily, because we know that one of the biggest risks for sustainability, even before the lack of action, is the lack of trust. So particularly now that the new greenwashing directive is entering into force in the member states, I think that it's fundamental saying only what we can prove. Only what we can prove, making sure that stakeholder can understand it. So it's a matter of proving, but also making sure that the stakeholders are fully involved in this kind of communication and general involvement. I would just listen some of the few principles, in communication and stakeholder engagement that I try to follow when during my in my work. The first, of course, is the transparency over storytelling. It's very important to communicate the achievement, but more than that, it's important also to start communicating the gaps, the trade-offs, the challenges. So something that is not really working well, because that's means that the company are required to disclose both impacts and risk, and avoids selective narratives, which is one of the risky moment in which greenwashing can appear. Then the communication has to be evidence-based. Just to rephrase famous claims: no data, no claims. That's basically means that if you do not have KPIs or consistent methodologies, alignment with the recognized standards, I think the communication is very weak. And the communication has to be also consistent with the business strategy, the investment decisions, in those relevant and material topics for the company, But the center of the communication has to stay the stakeholder, as you mentioned before in your question. I think that the communication cannot be only one-way direction. It has to be a real engagement. And in other words, moving from broadcasting to dialogue, especially for companies like Enea, that we invest in infrastructures, it's very important in order to get the social consent to involve since the early stage the stakeholder. I mean, running context analysis, stakeholder mapping, identify the priorities, for stakeholders and for the company with the double materiality approach, etc. The proactive consultation and effective consultation is fundamental. Can be through direct consultation, community forums, internal survey, engagement with suppliers and partners and customers, and making sure that this kind of engagements continue over the life cycle of the infrastructure, or the entire life cycle of the project that we are providing. And last but not least, 2 points. The grievance mechanism is important. If you want to make sure that your stakeholders are involved, you need to create a grievance mechanism that can help them to communicate with you. And then you have a system that can you make sure that their complaints are managed and resolved. And last but not least, to include inclusion and credibility. When you involve stakeholders, we need to include all stakeholders, really, including vulnerable groups, maybe asking the help and the support from independent third parties, that can help to make this kind of engagement more neutral and more effective. That's basically, some thoughts for you and for the audience.
Yeah, it's something that is not just individual of our companies. It's a good idea to search for collaboration and partnerships. Thank you very much, Giovanni. And the second question related to this, our findings acknowledge that most companies have so far focused on addressing environmental issues, and perhaps less so on social topics. Do you think it is indeed time to rebalance this focus?
Well, I'm totally, aligned with the findings and with the research findings, because somehow we see that it's already happened. Just always referring to our sector, thinking about the energy transition, what we see is that the success of the energy transition or the green transition more in general, in my view, will depend not only on how environmentally will be effective, so how much emission will be reduced, but also on whether if it is socially acceptable and credible. That's something that is already happened, and we see. And what we see is not just a trade-off between environmental and social. It's something that is more related to the shift in expectation. You know, we are seeing stakeholders that they want more than the just environmental part. I mean, if we look at the past decade, of course, companies were mainly focused on environment and climate, and it was correct, I mean, in my view, because climate wasn't, unfortunately, it's still an urgency to be addressed. But today things are changing in reality. And there, I mean, we see the people are asking, are we doing more than are we doing enough on climate? They are asking, are we doing it in a way that works for people and for me? That's basically the question that we see from people in the territories where we operate and we interact with. So social is becoming more and more a very hard business condition, especially for the infrastructure. You know, the public acceptance of the projects is something that is a bottleneck in order to continue growing in renewable energies or in other type of infrastructures. But also the access and the affordability of the energy is important. You know, people and energy poverty is continue to be an issue, you know, in certain part of the world, including Europe, in many countries. And the transition also bring a dilemma on the jobs, you know, because a certain sector will disappear. What we're gonna do with the people, with the workers? So there is a need, a request of jobs, of quality of jobs, of reskilling, upskillings, you know. And in the same, we need to also help the supply chain to work in this environment that is continuously changing. Again, communication is essential on that. I think that we need to communicate more, and also to listen to people in order to understand how to address the social aspect. And more than creating a dilemma between environment and social, I think that we continue working in try to integrate environmental and social dimensions, because they are deeply interconnected. You know, they are two aspects of the same problem, and that's why we need to work on both environmental, on the climate and topics, and not only on the climate topic, but on other way. On their side, we need to make sure that the energy transition is going to be a just transition where nobody is left alone or left behind.
Yeah, two sides of the same coin. Thank you very much,
Yeah.
Giovanni. We will close this specific questions block with two questions for you, Sam. Okay. The first one. One of the report's conclusions is that there is no one-size-fits-all approach to sustainability. How should companies adapt their sustainability strategies according to their level of maturity, size, and sector, including that of their business partners, also suppliers and clients?
I think that's such a great question. And I think what's come across so clearly through our conversation is how sustainability adds value to our businesses. So this shouldn't just be the preserve of large companies. Everyone should be able to understand how sustainability can be valuable to their businesses. So I think there's a real opportunity here for all organizations to do that. But I think at the heart of that, it's about really focusing in what is material for your business, and feeling that it's not all or nothing. It's being able to start somewhere and do some aspects of sustainability. So progress without perfection. And I think giving people the confidence to really focus and build and grow and create that sustainability profile for their own organization, I think gives people confidence to kind of own it. I think on the how side to do that, we've talked about the various ways of embedding and so on. So I think, you know, again, it's really understanding your business, getting to the heart of what it is that you do. You know, are you professional services, or are you, you know, a water company? Your sustainability profile is very, very different. But also thinking about it across the value chain. So understanding the role of your supply chain, the role of your operations, and the role of your customers. And I think creating that holistic approach allows you to consider sustainability and where you are then operating in an ecosystem. So I think as you explore how to evolve your sustainability strategy, being part of sector forums can be really, really useful, because it gives you access to other people operating in your sector to learn and to share best practice. And it's something we've really seen within our own sector, is bringing people together across that value chain. So again, supply chain or whatever, allows you to see how you all play your part and are parts of the jigsaw, but also support smaller organisations who might be part of your supply chain. And I think a really good example of this is many of us are grappling with scope 3. There's a requirement there, you know, as part of a climate strategy, to engage with your supply chain. How can you make this not just a demand signal on your suppliers, but actually an authentic value add for them? So I think this requires some careful thought, but behind that is an opportunity to really drive benefit and create positive aspects. So, you know, be focused, be a little bit ruthless about what you do, and don't operate alone. Operate within your ecosystem, and you will really, you know, forums like this, you will really be able to see that benefit.
So it's a great idea to join the networks, like no?
Absolutely, yes. Best thing you can do.
Thank you, Sam. Last question. This blog is also for you, Sam. One of our key findings is the need to invest in ESG competencies and cross-functional collaboration. What would be your tops and flops to be shared with our audience today?
Okay. So I think when you consider the breadth of sustainability, it's often rare that every aspect of sustainability sits within a sustainability function. So my personal, you know, the way that I operate is that I don't have to do it all. I just need to make sure that it gets done. And so I think it's when you consider those aspects of how are you going to create that oversight and control or influence those different aspects, that's where that cross-functional collaboration comes in so importantly. And I think a really good example of where it's absolutely critical is around your, you know, if you're operating a climate transition action plan, for example. I think many of us have done a lot of work around decarbonisation, and it's quite probable that you've been running a programme or working with a colleague who's running a programme that will include an energy team or a facilities team, you know, and you'll be considering that decarbonisation. But as our understanding of climate change has evolved, many organisations are now building into their climate strategies the resilience piece. And that may not have come first, it may have been built on that decarbonisation piece. And so as you look at this, you're bringing other aspects of your functional profile. And for us, that was really starting new conversations with our risk team. So I think, you know, our energy team had really understood the challenge and really driving those programs. But bringing the risk team in and helping them understand the resilience piece and connecting them in really strengthened this program in a way that was really, really important. And I think, you know, certainly I anticipate that as our programs evolve, we will be increasingly bringing different people in to bring that shared ownership. And, you know, our colleagues have touched on this, you know, that level of accountability, the data and so on, is bringing people across your functions to either lead those projects or to contribute in those roles, you know, be it data or whatever. So I would say a real positive for us has been around that climate cross-functional. You asked me about tops and flops. I think an area that was perhaps a harder sell for us was around social value. And this is a very specific challenge within the UK, where this is specific delivery of aspects of sustainability as part of customer projects. And so it was a real pivot for our organisation as we understood sustainability as something that our company embraced, and it was something that we did, but delivering it through projects was quite a different mindset. And it took quite a lot of work to make sure that it ended up in the place that it needed to be. And I remember quite a challenging conversation with our growth function, where I think they were hoping that I would look after this entire program, until I was able to articulate that they were essentially asking me to write every bid that went through our business. And we all agreed that the practicalities of that were perhaps not there. I'm neither a professional bid writer nor able or have the bandwidth to work on every bid. And so I think it was not so much a flop, but a thinking about how you engage with different functions to help them understand that the responsibility sits with them, that while the concept, this new sustainability concept, probably was going to be picked up by my function because we're looking out, we're horizon scanning, it would have been the wrong thing to have held on to that. It was the right thing to work with that function and then subsequently support them. And I think, again, that comes back to that cross-functional piece, which is not to walk away, but to work with and collaborate so that there's no gap, that we create that function. So hopefully that brings to life perhaps two areas of collaboration.
Thank you, Sam. And the last question, I have the same question for the three of you to close this round table. Regarding this report as a whole, okay? And this time, these 10 priorities. Out of the 10 priorities, is there one that comes as a surprise to you, or that perhaps you would disagree with? Sam, you can start. Surprised you disagree with any of the...
To be honest, what surprised me was how strongly they all resonated with me. And I think really what it showed me was that there is no silver bullet to being successful with sustainability, that there are many different facets. And it was hugely reassuring to know, as colleagues out right the way across Europe, we're all facing very similar challenges. And that's really reassuring, because what it means is that we can collaborate and share best practice, and we can all move faster together. So I suppose my surprise was how aligned we all were, but that was my take.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Sam. Yolanda.
Well, I particularly value the recognition that companies are progressing at the different speeds in their sustainability journeys. No? This creates a significant opportunity, especially for small and medium-sized companies to emerge as powerful agents of change. Even smaller organizations can deliver a strong positive impact on society and the planet. And for me, this is grateful, no, that this recognition in this report.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Yolanda. Well, Giovanni, anything surprise for you, or?
No, surprised not. As Sam, I was surprised by the fact that we are sharing the same challenges or the same problems across Europe. I mean, it's probably we are more united than sometimes we think. I mean, I think that, I mean, I was joking, but in any case, the challenge is really huge. You know, I think that in front of us, we need to evolve, to acquire new competencies, to become more authoritative. You know, we need to continue to set up the short-term direction, keeping the focus on the long-term direction, you know, and all those, you know, findings are really useful and helpful for, you know, for continue this journey. Thanks.
Thank you. Well, we have come to the end of this roundtable. So, grazie mille, Giovanni. Thank you very much, Sam. Muchas gracias, Yolanda. And I don't know, Jean-François, if we have any questions in the chat.
We had zillions of questions. Sorry, just a joke. I think we had very shy participants. However, Panos, whom we know well, by the way, Panos is actually heading the Hellenic Association of Sustainability, has a question for you guys on the panel. It's a tough one. We promise you there will be one. So you can probably see it in the chat, but let me read it aloud. If your organization has its sustainability reporting been externally verified by an independent assurer, what were your experiences and lessons learned? So, any of you?
Who wants to start?
That's a surprise question, right?
I'm happy to start if it could be useful. We have our scope 1 and scope 2 verified to limited assurance. And my approach with this is always that we need to treat this as a learning experience, that, you know, sometimes when you get assurance, it can feel quite challenging to have all that scrutiny. But I think if you have an open mindset and really consider how we can learn, because ultimately what we're trying to do is create really simple, effective processes so that our data is really good. There are opportunities to do other areas of assurance, and we've looked at different data sets and decided that they aren't as complex as those, so we don't really need them. But I think it's about trying to be positive and learning from it, but perhaps not doing everything is our experience.
I don't know, Yolanda, Giovanni, you want to add
The same.
anything?
No, it's the
Okay.
same.
No, no, same for us. Yeah.
Thank you.
So we have maybe time for second and probably presumably last question. So time is running out. So we just have the right amount of questions, which is in the chat, but let me read it aloud again. How does the gap between sustainability capability in the EU and the other countries where your company operates affect your level of compliance under EU regulation? Yolanda, I'm not sure it's for you because I believe you're only operating in Spain. Yeah, Giovanni,
maybe I can start if you want, Jean-François. In reality, for what regards my experience, we do not see this gap in sustainability between European countries and not European countries, because we try to adopt similar standards everywhere we operate, because at the end of the day, what our experience is that even though the regulation might be different from country to country, you know, social and environmental risks are there, not because the regulation is there or not. You know, we are more and more under scrutiny of all our stakeholders, so we need to prove that we are operating the same way in all the countries. So this gap, I don't see it, at least in our case, it doesn't exist, a significant gap.
So unless, I mean, you have anything to add, maybe it was just time for third and really truly final question from Leonard. I mean, you know, who's clearly suffering because many of his customers are struggling with the complexity and changes in regulation. I think it sounds familiar to many of us. What might be a solution for this challenge?
I'm happy to pick up perhaps the way that we're tackling this. And I think it goes back to creating networks within your ecosystem. So one of the things that I chair a sector network, and we have a little horizon scanning update on a regular basis that we all share, and we all contribute to it because I think we're stronger together. So you may not pick up everything individually, but between you all, you may pick stuff up. And then at that point, you're able to come together to have the conversation, to try and process what it actually means and its applicability. And I think, again, that's really powerful. So, you know, as a community, we're talking about CBAMs quite a lot, the Carbon Board Adjustment Mechanism, which has some quite subtle differences depending on when you operate. And so having that conversation and creating that shared understanding is a really powerful way of actually supporting and adding value for your customer, but both of you learning so that you can work together so you reduce your risk as well. So it's worth investing the time.
Should that be our last word on the, you know, on the question and answer from panelists?
Sorry, if I might, we still have a couple of questions, and we have 10 minutes left.
Sorry. All right, but we probably need a bit of a wrap up and next steps. But so, why don't you pick a question, Marina? I mean, you know, let's be, you know, just so we don't make questions, you know.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
So maybe the one from Alberto, the 10-point census presents today tells us what sustainability professionals across Europe are currently seeing, feeling. Perhaps a further step would be to ask ourselves, what do these findings tell us about the future of the profession itself? It's an interesting question. Perspectives for us as professionals.
Giovanni, have you got that crystal ball handy?
Yeah. Yeah, but that's true. I mean, it's complex, but at the end of the day, I think that we have a strong basics on which we can build new capabilities and new opportunities for the future. So I'm fairly optimistic, but it's not going to be easy. That's for sure.
Mm.
And regarding the last question, Marina, about the panelist is asking the Paris Sustainability Reporting Framework and the adoption thereof. It's complex. That's my answer. It requires a lot of effort, and so I prefer not to comment too much.
Then again,
Okay.
that's complexity backdrop. Marina, do you think it's maybe time to attempt a quick wrap up? I mean, you were asked to
Yes.
do so. Difficult exercise, but the floor is
Yes,
yours.
I did. Yes, I did a quick wrap up while you were discussing. So I'm gonna just share quickly this. So basically, so of course, was super. Thank you so much for all your insights and inputs to the three of you, and also Carlos for moderating this roundtable. So I've tried to summarize what I heard, at least what resonated most. So the first thing was reframing ESG into business pain points. I call them pain points. So a thing that is really an issue, and then make the link to sustainability. So in terms of risks, but also in terms of opportunities, how this increases performance or gives access to capital, for example. And one of the important things here to do is to know your business inside out, including the whole value chain. And then we heard also from Sam suggesting to join networks, let's say networks from your own sector that can help here. The other topic that resonated was in a VUCA world. I don't know if everyone knows VUCA is in a world that is volatile, uncertain, complex and ambiguous. So you have to plan for change and make sure that ESG remains relevant for business and making sure to adapt quickly. Then there was a topic about how to engage your leadership team, helping them work their mindset, skill set and tool set. And then we heard different examples and ideas on this. The topic about ESG risk management, how to make sure ESG is integrated in risk management. If there's not a huge adoption, create a common language, and then this helps. It can help to engage internally. We heard this from Yolanda, for example. Then Giovanni shared his crystal ball about ESG skills needed. So technical, analytical, but also cross-functional collaboration. This is something that we know already, but at least from the technical analytical side, there needs to be more really upskilling on this. And of course, continue and having the ability to influence, especially internally, but also outside of the company. There was a sharing about how to raise confidence among teams internally. So have them start on something and then the progress, aim for progress without perfection. This will help build confidence. And then we had a discussion about avoiding greenwashing. I liked what Giovanni said about no data, no claim as a kind of rule. And also the need to move from top-down communication to a dialogue, really. And then the discussion about E and S, so environmental and social topics are really interconnected. So, and keep that in mind to make sure we propose a just transition. And in the end, so the overall feedback was that really the topics we shared today and the challenges that sustainability professionals face are kind of similar across Europe, and then we should actually collaborate more. So yeah, as a key takeaway, these are some of them. And I give the floor to you, Jean-François, to share some things that you can do as participants after this webinar.
Right, but not before congratulating you, Marina, for this great wrap-up. I think excellent. Thank you. I think the panelists as well. Yes, indeed. I mean, so far we have been working, but I mean, we hope that actually you guys, I mean, on top of your additional day-to-day task, are willing, I mean, to do something, I mean, to engage with the EASP. So first of all, of course, I mean, terms and conditions may vary from country to country, but if not already done, please join or at least look the membership, rules for your national association. I will give the contacts a little bit later, the last slide, so that you know whom to contact if ever you're not already part or one of the association. We would actually recommend for those already members or will be members, to contact your local reps, national reps. If you have any suggestions for any pan-European initiatives you would like, to suggest or to contribute, in particular with the development of the EASP, because so far it's just there's a volunteering base. So we need actually new ideas. We need energy, and we need time as well from people to engage. And believe me, it's very rewarding. I think all of us prepare this and testify. And we are glad to report that we've just actually created our new LinkedIn page. So the link will be in the in the presentation, which we will circulate, and you can find it through the search engine of LinkedIn. And we aim to, so no absolute guarantee, but our absolute aim is actually to publish a white paper based on that survey. And we have some other initiatives on the back stove essentially, and which we will make sure to keep and publicize to our LinkedIn page. So that being said, we maybe just can share the different contacts, and I think all of us would like to thank all the participants, the panelists in particular, for joining today. Hopefully, you enjoyed the time, and it gives you the energy and desire and crave to do more probably cross-European collaboration on those ESG topics. So thank you very much indeed to all of you, and we're really looking forward to getting your feedbacks and ideas. Three minutes earlier.
Thanks a lot. Thanks, Jean-François. Thanks, Marina. Thanks,
Thank you
Carlos.
very
For a
much.
great conversation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Bye.